Robservations with Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your evangelist of the imagination, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, Rob casting at you Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of this kind of an interesting story rolling around in Hollywood for the last month. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I wanted to talk about, well, verisimilitude. And I have to say that one of I think my pet peeves about movies, especially movies involving, well, young people in the last, say, 20, 25 years, people are just too damn good looking. Doesn't matter what movie you're watching, like you go any movie set in a high school, like everybody is too good looking. And if they're not too good looking and they're supposed to be like geeky losers or nerds or whatever, they're cliche. I just feel like realism, it's all sort of been lost. And it bothers me because I sort of came of age watching movies in the 70s. And in the 70s, the people that were on our screens were people like Roy Scheider and Gene Hackman, or strange-looking people like maybe a younger Bruce Dern, or even Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson, a handsome guy, but he looked real. He looked like somebody you might meet on the street. Even Al Pacino, with his matinee idol good looks, especially when he was in Godfather 2, he still seemed like he lived in the real world. Now, that's not to say Hollywood has always given us beautiful people, but I think in the days of yore, there was something about the way people looked, the way they were gussied up. They were larger than life almost. Sure, you would get a Humphrey Bogart or somebody like that, and they were unconventionally handsome. But in the black and white films, maybe it's just my own rose-colored glasses, but people they were supposed to be more larger than life. But in the 70s, we had that transition from sort of that Hollywood model into that maverick model of people making movies like, well, Easy Rider or the Godfather movies or things like that. And there was a naturalism that came into movies. And even people who were starring in films, in my mind, you believed them more. They seemed, even someone like a William Hurt, when he shows up in Altered States and then Body Heat in the early 80s, very handsome guy, but still a guy that you might encounter in real life. And that was something that I've always been interested in. And as the viceroy of verisimilitude, I'm always keenly aware of, do I believe the people that I'm watching on screen, the ones that are inhabiting the stories that are being told? Like, I'll give you an example. One of the movies that I always held up as sort of being one of the last vestiges of 70s movies moving into 80s movies was Jaws, not one, but Jaws 2, because Jaws 2 is essentially a story about cruising teenagers, well, on a killer shark, but cruising teenagers instead of going down Van Nuys Boulevard or being in Modesto like in American Graffiti or something like that. They were on catamarans. And here's the exciting cast of young people. Not a very good picture. I took it off the internet. But look at all of them. They all looked relatively normal. You believe them. They're from a seaside community, Amity Island, obviously, and they look naturalistic. They look like real people. And even John Hughes, when John Hughes started making films and he brought Molly Ringwald to the fore in something like 16 Candles, I think the thing about Molly Ringwald was she had an unconventional beauty to her. She didn't look like a pinup model. And I think as a result of that, she was very interesting to watch, whether it was in 16 Candles or The Breakfast Club. You really felt there was an accessibility there because she felt real. I believed her as Andy in 16 Candles. And that's what I liked. Even Andrew McCarthy, he's pretty much like a matinee idol, but John Cryer as Ducky had a quirkiness to him, and it worked. Nowadays, I keep thinking when I really noticed things were changing was Rachel Lee Cook in She's All That. There's Rachel Lee Cook in She's All That. And Rachel Lee Cook is supposed to be this nerd girl. And I remember watching this film always thinking, well, Rachel Lee Cook she's a beautiful girl. She's not a nerd, but you're supposed to believe she's a nerd. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, she ends up going to, she puts on makeup and a dress, and she goes from what this is supposed to be nerd girl to the girl that anybody would be proud to take anywhere. And I just was like, wait, couldn't anybody see through the fact that when you're going to school, you might look like this, you might be nerd girl, but hey, you go out on a Friday night and you can transform into this? No one saw that? I was always like, huh. Now, I was thinking also about, like, performers that I thought were striking when I first saw them. Meryl Streep being one of them. Here's Meryl Streep in Woody Allen's Manhattan. Now, obviously, Meryl Streep, especially with that cascading hair, is a beautiful woman. But there's something classical about her. She almost has a painterly quality to her face. I mean, she looks like she could be out of any era. Like, here she is in the miniseries Holocaust. I mean, look at her face. This is a woman of timeless beauty. She doesn't look like a pinup model, but her beauty sort of transcends the era in which she exists in, and I like that. Take a look at this. Do you know who this is? This is Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron, that's her as Eileen Wuornos in Patty Jenkins' Monster. We all know what Charlize Theron looks like. She looks like this, or she looks like this. But in the film Monster, she was fearless because she decided to look like this. She put on the pounds. She did the work. I mean, I think she's wearing messed up teeth there, but I don't even know. This is an amazing commitment to performance. And I love that. I think that's amazing. Which brings me to Carey Mulligan. Carey Mulligan, who is currently starring in Promising Young Woman that was made by Margot Robbie's production house, Lucky Chap Productions. Well, there was a little brouhaha that happened when Promising Young Woman premiered at Sundance. A Variety critic named Dennis Harvey reviewed the film back on January 26th, 2020, and in his review, he had a problem with the premise of Promising Young Woman, that Carey Mulligan might not be, let's say, believable in the role of a woman that's seeking revenge by going out and seducing men in bars, feigning drunkenness. They would take her home, that kind of craziness, and then she would turn the tables on them. So, once again, Carey Mulligan, who, in my mind, is one of the great actresses of our generation. And I am a huge, huge fan of Carey Mulligan. If you haven't seen movies like An Education, or you haven't seen Never Let Me Go, Carey Mulligan is an incredibly versatile actress, and there's something about her, like, I don't know what it is, maybe it's her voice. She just touches my soul. I love her as a performer. But so, Dennis Harvey posted in his review that she wasn't, or alluded to the fact that she wasn't hot enough, like, to be believable as a woman that would attract men. And let's just take a look at her again in the thumbnail. Here's how she appears in Promising Young Woman. Now, just let me tell you, I know she's dressed up. There's a part of the movie this is specifically from, but let me tell you, I don't care what universe you're in, but if you're in a bar and you meet a girl like this and she's talking to you, I don't care whether she's drunk, whether she's not drunk, you're having a good night. And if you hear her voice, it's even better. So anyway, what happened was Dennis Harvey in his review made a comment that he thought it strained credulity that someone like her would attract so many guys. Now I understand Every man has different tastes. But one of the things that I love about Carey Mulligan, and what I've always loved about Carey Mulligan, and maybe it's a taste thing for me too, but I've always thought that Carey Mulligan has a beauty the same way that Meryl Streep had a beauty when you first saw it. She transcended the time in which she was in, and then add to the fact that she's an incredible actress. The same thing I feel is true of Carey Mulligan, that there's a beauty, there's a timeless quality to her beauty. She feels like she might be from another age or something, and then you couple that with the fact that she is an amazing actress. And also, she's a mom of two. But I love Carey Mulligan, and so the comment that Dennis Harvey made was really pretty much under the radar for 11 months or something. And then, of course, Promising Young Woman finally gets released. It's on VOD right now. I recommend watching it. And it has a really sort of a, well, I wanted to read an article so you know what it's, this isn't really, well, maybe it is a little spoilerific. I don't know. If you haven't seen it, maybe not, but I wanted to read this article. This article is from Woman's Agenda. Promising Young Woman, a film that could only have been made by a woman, by Shivani Gopal. This was from 4 weeks ago. Promising Young Woman was made by Margot Robbie's production house, Lucky Chap Productions, along with Emerald Fennell as the writer-director. As a woman, there's a good chance that watching A Promising Young Woman will leave you screaming, "Me too," with every fiber of your being. In fact, I can't ever recall a time that I've walked out of the cinema so hot with rage, yet oddly cold and focused with anger, all the while having my eyes heavy and in need of a good, solid cry. Until now. Why? The movie makes you feel somewhat validated, listened to, and finally acknowledged after what feels like going through most of your life being seemingly gaslighted for sounding crazy when calling out the bad behavior of good guys who act in good fun. This is a film that gets the portrayal of the villain right. You see, the people who so aggrieve Carey Mulligan's character aren't the dangerous-looking random guys who try to follow you home. No, they're everyday people, the ones you look up to, try and impress, and want to get along with. Even the guys who we, the audience, are supposed to despise are just that, ordinary guys. The kind his best man would vouch for at his wedding. Telling tales about what a great guy he is, and maybe even crack the odd joke or two about his awkward failings in the past, only to finally land on his feet to find his one true love. The kind of guy who went through a stupid phase of boys being boys, just mucking around, but then he got his shit together finally, pulled up his socks, and now he's a responsible young man. The seemingly normal villains conjure up a Brett Kavanaugh-esque protagonist, someone who might have screwed up in his youth, but he's since scrubbed up nice and clean. A respectable citizen with polo shirts and beige chinos to match, and yet the damage done of the past is swept under the rug. Except it's not forgotten, and it's never cleanly compartmentalized under the rug for the women who've experienced assault or the people helping them to pick up the pieces. Cassie, the character that Mulligan plays, portrays the heartbreaking damage painfully well. As a non-movie buff, non-critic, or someone who would even remotely identify as an enthusiast, enough to know the names, histories, and careers of those who give us these boons of entertainment, or in this case, a sheer emotion-jerking roller coaster, there was still something that was breathtakingly clear to me. This film could only have been made by a woman, or make that a team of women. And so, I don't necessarily think that's true, but I understand where she's coming from. And so, like any non-movie buff would do, I came home and looked up the team that brought the film to life. Of course, my hunch was right. A Promising Young Woman was made by Margot Robbie's production house, Lucky Chap Productions, along with Emerald Fennell as the writer-director. For those who are equally and somewhat embarrassingly non-aware of the film industry as I am, Fennell also played Camille Bowles in Netflix's The Crown. She's clearly a woman of many talents. So how did I know the film was made by a woman as I cringed, laughed, and cried? Only a woman could have picked the offenders out with such realism, and only a woman could have called out the attempted gaslighting of man's worst nightmare. Spoiler alert, it's been accused of sexual assault, with such ease while portraying the dangers of revenge-seeking vigilantism to reflect the very real nightmares of women's lives, and one that sadly plays out all too often, even without the revenge-seeking. Mulligan's character, Cassie, during her vigilante escapades, "Who are you?" asks during her vigilante escapades, "Who are you?" And it echoes such an important question. What are we doing? Why are we still giving rape culture the benefit of the doubt? Why do we let seemingly good guys get away with casual misogyny? Every time an action or comment gets swept under the rug, ask yourself, what are you doing? After all, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. I, for one, am so glad that women are finally in the movie-making business. Thank you, Margot Robbie, Emerald Fennell, and Carey Mulligan for bringing this to life. You've invoked some hard conversations on the drive back home from the cinemas and those back to the office water cooler, Zoom chats, and no doubt, but they're the ones we finally need to have. So I thought that was a pretty interesting article about how women have, especially women that aren't necessarily film pundits or movie fans in general, have responded to this movie. And there's a lot of really tough questions that are asked by the film. But anyway, back to the review in Variety. So the review in Variety made this comment that they didn't necessarily believe that Carey Mulligan was this femme fatale that any guy could, or that men were desired. You know, you're out at a bar and you would see her, and the point was made that maybe Margot Robbie would be better. This was irksome to me. It was irksome to me as the viceroy of verisimilitude and somebody who has both produced and directed movies. Because the thing is, if you had Margot Robbie in the central role, Margot Robbie who ended up looking like, say, how she looked in The Wolf of Wall Street, girls like that you don't see very often in bars, drunk because, and trying to, Carey Mulligan, her character, is being seducing of these men for a reason. I won't get into why. But I wouldn't have believed Margot Robbie in that role, but I believe Carey Mulligan because Carey Mulligan's beauty seems more natural. I love Margot Robbie. I think she's a tremendous performer, and when she does something like I, Tonya, she, like Charlize Theron, is fearless. She's not somebody who's really too worried about her looks. She probably has a lot more, she's more secure in being able to really lose herself in the role. So that's commendable. But someone like Carey Mulligan, I believe Carey Mulligan is somebody who would be out at night. She reminds me of somebody, well, people I've met in bars in Los Angeles in the 30 years I've lived here. I think her casting in the film was perfect. I thought she was tremendous in the film. And, you know, it really added to, I thought, the believability of it. So anyway, what has happened subsequent? So 11 months go by. Now I'm going to read an article. I don't know if you guys read. He's a pretty divisive figure as far as film pundits go, but I've been reading Jeffrey Wells and Hollywood Elsewhere for years. He actually was very complimentary when Free Enterprise came out, and whether he's kind of a film journalist people either read religiously and other people they don't like him very much. I do like him. I think a lot of what he writes is kind of theater, but there's a lot of people that don't like him for various reasons, and they might not be wrong. I read him every single day. I always have. Full disclosure, I even give him $5 a month for his column because I appreciate it. I've been reading it for so long. Anyway, he talked about what has happened with critic Dennis Harvey, who wrote this review. And it's now because Promising Young Woman has come out. The review has been found. Variety republished it. And the fact that Dennis Harvey said he didn't believe Carey Mulligan was hot enough, basically, to pull off, in a nutshell, to pull off this role has caused something of a brouhaha. So let me read Jeffrey Wells' column. And people have jumped in, both pro and con. Some people you might know. The National Society of Film Critics stands up to Mulligan coddling, Harvey dissing Variety. It's been roughly 6.5 weeks since Variety editors threw longtime critic Dennis Harvey under the bus by posting an apology for his 1/6/20 review of Promising Young Woman, which had been edited by Variety's Peter DeBruge and had sat on the Variety website for 11 months without anyone saying boo. Variety groveled and kowtowed because Carey Mulligan had complained about a certain paragraph in the review to New York Times columnist Kyle Buchanan on 12/23/20. Let me see if I can jump over here. Carey Mulligan won't let Hollywood off the hook. The actress delivered the performance of her career in the dark comedy Promising Young Woman. Then came those with their tired views of women. Not every Carey Mulligan movie begins with the Charlie XCX song, but maybe more of them should. When Promising Young Woman deploys the 2017 Pop Bop Boys in its opening moment, it's the first sign you're about to get something from Mulligan that you're not used to, namely a contemporary setting. I know that for a cinema audience, I'm just constantly in period costume, Mulligan said recently, shrugging her shoulders in an oversized red sweater. She was video chatting with me from her British country house in Devon, where she had sequestered herself in a darkened music room typically used by her husband, Marcus Mumford, from the band Mumford & Sons. A single solitary lamp illuminated her, as a single solitary lamp often does with Mulligan. You'll find little more than the meager light source in many of the 35-year-old actress's most recent movies, which include Far from the Madding Crowd, set around 1870, Suffragette, about equal rights protests in 1912 Britain, and Mudbound, which begins in the year 1939. It has been nearly a decade since Mulligan starred in a modern-day film, Steve McQueen's Shame from 2011, a span of time that initially surprised even her. But then she goes on and she talks about the Variety article and complained about it. And I think, well, rightfully so. Rightfully so. I'm going to put this article in the live chat if you would like to read it. And you should. So, she said, I read the Variety review because I'm a weak person, Mulligan told Buchanan, and I took issue with it. It felt like it was basically saying that I wasn't hot enough to pull off this kind of ruse. And so Variety rushed right in, apologized to Carey Mulligan, and by inference Focus Features, and posted the following above Harvey's review. Editor's note, Variety sincerely apologizes to Carey Mulligan and regrets the insensitive language and insinuation in our review of Promising Young Woman that minimized her daring performance. A few of us, this is Jeff Wells again, a few of us, myself, the Anklers' Richard Rushfield, Collider's Jeff Snyder, author and former Variety critic Joseph McBride, The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw, Across the Movie Aisle podcasters Sonny Bunch, Alyssa Rosenberg, and Peter Suderman, have tweeted, written, and podcasted about Variety's appalling behavior over the last few weeks. But today, the National Society of Film Critics finally stepped in and did the gutsy thing. So, okay, they could have done it sooner. They needed to think about all the ramifications and consider all the angles and dot all the I's and cross all the T's for the last 5 or 6 weeks. But at least they grew a pair and manned up. Hollywood elsewhere salutes their courage, and so does Pike Bishop in heaven. Here's their statement. From the National Society of Film Critics regarding Variety's apology for its Promising Young Woman review. Now remember, Variety apologized 11 months after this review was written, when Carey Mulligan specifically called this review out. We, the members of the National Society of Film Critics, wish to register our alarm at Variety's shabby treatment of our colleague Dennis Harvey. On January 26th, 2020, Variety published Harvey's review of the movie Promising Young Woman from the Sundance Film Festival. Full disclosure, the review was edited by Peter DeBruge, Variety's chief film critic and member of the NSFC, the National Society of Film Critics. While praising the film, Harvey wrote that Carey Mulligan, a fine actress, seems a bit of an odd choice as the movie's many-layered apparent femme fatale protagonist, noting distancing aspects of the character's costuming, hairstyling, and vocal delivery. He went on to praise Mulligan's performance as skillful, entertaining, and challenging, even when the eccentric method obscures the precise message. On December 24th, 2020, almost a year later, and in the thick of award season, Mulligan noted her objections to Harvey's review in a New York Times profile. It felt like it was basically saying I wasn't hot enough to pull off this kind of ruse. Mulligan, like any artist, is within her rights to respond to criticism of her work, just as we are within our rights to assert that nothing in Harvey's review, which focuses on the actor's stylized presentation, not her attractiveness, supports her claim. But differences of opinion in the evaluation of a film or a performance are not at issue here. What concerns us is Variety's subsequent decision to place an editor's note at the top of the review. Variety sincerely apologizes to Carey Mulligan and regrets the insensitive language and insinuation in our review of Promising Young Woman that minimized her daring performance. If Variety felt the language in Harvey's review was insensitive and insinuating, it had the option of working with him to fix that in the editing process before the review ran. There are also ways Variety could have acknowledged and responded to Mulligan's criticism rather than simply capitulating to it and undermining its own critic in the process. The imposition of a subjective value judgment, her daring performance, as a flat editorial perspective, as if it were a matter of inarguable fact rather than opinion, is particularly inappropriate. We believe the editor's note should be removed. Like any journalism, film criticism often displeases those being written about, and like any journalists, film critics must have the support of their publications when that displeasure, usually coming from people far more powerful than any journalist, is made known, especially when that publication claims to report on the industry those powerful people inhabit. It is appalling that, in this instance, Variety chose to side with that power rather than supporting its writer. The current National Society of Film Critics chairman is LA Times critic Justin Chang. By the way, great critic. The executive director is Liz Weiss. So that was what Jeffrey Wells was reporting on. Now, what I find interesting about this whole thing is, well, twofold. First, the idea of, I think, people love all kinds of people. Everybody has different tastes. People, men especially, like all kinds of different women, just like women, especially, like all different kinds of men. And I think it's okay when we're commenting on those things. I gave you my thoughts about how I believe that people, especially young people, are just too damn good looking. I don't believe them anymore. It's like watching a catalog as opposed to a show. And one of the things that I've always found appealing, as I said, about Carey Mulligan is she can inhabit, I think, almost any role. And while, yes, she's a little bit typecast in what she can do, I think she's incredibly striking. She's an amazing performer. And for whatever reason, maybe it's the cadence of her voice, I immediately connect with her on screen when I watch anything that she does, especially, as I said, in An Education and Never Let Me Go. Is her performance in that movie is just heartbreaking, and I love it. I can't speak highly enough about one of my favorite science fiction films of the last 20 years. But the idea that film criticism, that somebody, especially if you're writing for a publication now, I sit there and bang on about Star Trek Discovery all the time. But if I were to meet, and I did actually, I met at Comic-Con 2 years ago, I met one of the producers of Star Trek Discovery. I went right up to him because he and I were going at each other one day on Twitter. And I walked up to him and I went a little too far. I apologized to him. I didn't sit there and change my opinion. If I met Alex Kurtzman, I would say, Mr. Kurtzman, it's a pleasure to meet you. If it came up, I would say I'm really not a fan of anything that you do, but I'm sure I could have a nice conversation with him, because I do respect the fact that even though I might not like what he's making, I certainly respect his ability to get things made. And I would contact or talk to somebody as far as that goes. But what I find so interesting about this whole story is, so you go from the verisimilitude of movies, that's one thing, but to comment on something, to be a reviewer, and to have a review up on a site for 11 months, and it's not like he came out and bashed Carey Mulligan. I disagree with his assessment of her. I think that she was perfectly cast in the film, and I think what was even better is every actor brings baggage with them into a film, and the fact that she's been in these period pieces, that she's played these kinds of, well, let's just say call her a nice girl or an introspective girl or a woman that has deeply felt feelings. I think all of that really worked well for the role she was playing in Promising Young Woman. And I think, by the way, that's probably why she was cast. And never once did I ever think, I don't believe this girl couldn't. I mean, men are pigs. I'll admit it. If we smell blood in the water and maybe there's a little time to maybe get something, guys are stupid. We're dumb. And I say that with the greatest respect. We are dumb, and I'll tell you why. We're even dumber because nobody teaches us. I've often thought in school we get sex education, but nobody teaches us sexuality. You're supposed to get manners from your mom and your dad, but men and women don't really, I don't know, are manners still taught anymore? Does anybody read Emily Post? Does anyone even know who Emily Post is these days? But, I mean, you should. And I think it's pretty interesting that this happened. But So this reviewer makes this commentary. Carey Mulligan brings it up in an interview, which suddenly draws attention to an 11-month-old review. Variety then, we're so appalled. Everybody gets their knives out and starts sharpening their knives and is coming out after a reviewer and goes after him. And then Variety apologizes for something they've had up on their own website for 11 months. They throw their own critic under the bus rather than stand by him, because that's the world that we live in. We would rather capitulate. Look, I'm not going to suddenly start telling people that I love Star Trek Discovery because, you shouldn't hurt people's feelings. I mean, sure, if I want to work on Star Trek, probably not going to happen for a number of reasons. I mean, if I got a call, I would go work on Star Trek, but I would flat out say, I think this show sucks, but I'm going to come to work on it because maybe I can make it better. That's kind of what I've done my whole life. And if you'll let me, I'll make your show better for you in my own small way. But I think that I think it's important that, if you're writing for somebody or you're an employee of someone's, and you've done work for them and they didn't do any kind of, or they didn't do the due diligence, they published the article. They didn't seem to have a problem with it 11 months ago. It was only when the person who's mentioned in the article calls them out, we're sorry. Like, have a backbone, man. I mean, I think you can stand up for people, and it's not like he was being insulting. He actually was saying things that were fairly complimentary to her performance. And I think that, but to speak in Carey Mulligan's defense, I also think that she was terrific in the role, and it never would have come up with me that I would have expected Margot Robbie. I would not have believed Margot Robbie being sloppy drunk at a bar by herself to pick up dudes. And if she was sloppy drunk by herself, the dudes that she's going to pick up, it wouldn't have worked. Especially if they had her, maybe if she dressed down the way she looked in I, Tonya, but it's very hard to make Margot Robbie look anything less than Margot Robbie. And for me, I think her performance and her accent in Wolf of Wall Street, not only is she an incredible actress, but she can also be just about the hottest thing going, one of the hottest women ever to appear in film, especially in that particular movie. So I don't know. Would she have been the best person to play the lead role? I'd like to believe, since her production company developed it, she actually thought it was a better idea that Carey Mulligan play the role. So you got two things going on here. You've got, in my mind, the verisimilitude of casting. What makes a movie believable? I mean, and if you're a good casting director, you realize that Charlize Theron can look like this, and she can also look like this. And it's a fearless actress that will allow herself to look like this. And that's why she's a great actress. And, I think that Carey Mulligan can pretty much do the same kind of thing. Your tastes might move more toward Charlize Theron than Carey Mulligan, but I don't know. I'll tell you something. I see this face, and I hear her voice, and I'm like, man, she can play any role in my book. But then there's the idea of, film criticism. And are you supposed to be nice to the films that you're criticizing? I mean, I don't think it's personal. I don't think it's, maybe it was the reviewer's personal taste that he's not a big Carey Mulligan fan, but ultimately he's calling it like he sees it, or she's calling it like she sees it. Doesn't matter who's reviewing the film. But you know what? If you're employing somebody, unless they've done something like, I don't know, pulled an Army Hammer, if you want to go topical, unless something like that's going on, you got to stick up for the people that work for you. You can't throw them under the bus unless they've done something, like I said, truly egregious that's borders on criminal. But if somebody has an opinion and you're hiring them, or you've already hired them and they're working for you, I think it was poor form to do what Variety did in this case. And anyway, what do you think? I don't know. Do you think about this kind of stuff? Maybe this is a little bit too inside baseball. I don't know. But it was just something that I was thinking about on a number of levels. So I figured I would share it with all of you today. And what do you think? I'll tell you what I think. I think there's a lot of letters that people have been sending me, and I'm going to jump right into them because, by God, people, have you been loquacious with your keyboards? And that's what I like. That's what we like around these parts, don't we? I know I do. Let's see who do I start with? Oh, this is a good one. Ooh, this one gets a little political. Little political. I like this one. This letter comes from L.D. Clark. L.D. Clark. Dear Mr. Burnett, I don't know that you will have time to read this on a stream, but I would be curious to hear your thoughts. Recently, I have seen on social media people saying if you are a fan of something and have a certain political affiliation, that you cannot possibly be a fan, or you miss the point entirely of the story. I'm curious of your take on this, as from what I've gathered, you and I are very opposite politically. I voted for Trump in 2016 and gladly voted for him again last year. I imagine you did not, and that's fine. People should still be able to be friendly and find common ground, but that seems to never be the case, even in our fandoms. It started with Star Wars, when Padme reacts to Palpatine creating the Empire from the Republic by saying liberty is dying. When I first saw this film as a teenager, my interpretation of it was a cautionary tale of letting government get out of control. Based on the arguments by the left I see about this, it seems to like their takeaway was to be wary of a charismatic leader looking for more power than they should have. In this case, they're both placing Trump in that role. I think both views are valid, and a case can be made for both. Me personally, I would worry more about the empire than one leader we could get rid of, but the big government and their control remains. In the old EU books, the empire stuck around a while with the new charismatic leader, and it was business as usual. However, if you bring up this point, I'm told I'm not a real fan or I just don't get it. The one that really bothers me is being told the same thing about Star Trek. I have been told as a conservative I can't be a fan, and I am the antithesis of what this show stands for. I've been a fan since I was 5 and saw The Next Generation. I always saw Star Trek as a great morality tale where the characters really struggled to do the right thing. Not the most popular or sometimes even legal thing, but they always looked at both sides and weighed their decisions carefully. The people who tell me I'm not a fan seem like they want my opinions stomped out. I replied by reminding them of Picard's speech from the drumhead. That's when the classic "you didn't get it" remark comes in. Really? I would think, if anything, Trek, pre-2009, could bring different-minded people together, but apparently not. I think it's healthy to remain open to opposing opinions. Instead of calling the opposite side Nazi, how about asking them to consider something they might not have thought about before with a well-thought-out debate? Sorry this went on longer than I intended. I'm just really curious to hear your thoughts as someone on the opposite end that has always expressed your opinions very well and thoughtfully. Thank you, L.D. Clark. Well, L.D., first of all, I got to say, sir, a terrific letter. I want to thank you for writing this in. Look, I think you're absolutely right. I really don't know what's been going on. But when I grew up, I was never on the debate team. But I've dated girls that have been on the debate team. I have a friend of mine is in particular is quite a keen. She has quite a keen intellect and is a very good debater. But I think what you learn in debate is you learn to debate different sides of an issue, and good debaters can debate the pro or con of an issue. And I think one of the things that we've lost is our ability. I mean, I really think critical thinking has gone out the window. And I don't really understand why. And when you say that you're a conservative, I don't necessarily think I don't know when people have decided that being a conservative means you're alt-right. I really don't understand the leaps that people make. And especially I don't understand the leaps people on. I mean, I consider myself a classical liberal, a classical left-leaning liberal. But that doesn't mean, for instance, I think that we should be fiscally conservative in this country. I don't think. I mean, right now we're trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. I think that's bad. I'm not even the best with money, but clearly, if you call my position, I guess it would be conservative. We're in debt, which means we're in debt to others that aren't us. And I think that makes us vulnerable. And whether that's a conservative position to take or not, I think it does leave us vulnerable. And I don't know if that makes, I think a real person has both left-leaning and conservative views. I don't think anybody is just staunchly one thing or another, as much as people might think. But I absolutely 100% agree with you. And I don't like the fact that we have forgotten how to have a conversation with people. One of the things that I've said on this channel, as a matter of fact, I say it every day, is that every single person has a story to tell. Every single person. You don't have to agree with them, but they've got a story to tell. And, by listening to the tale they're going to tell you, you will learn something. And I've often said that one of the biggest problems that we have now is it's not necessarily... It's not the color of people's skin that's important. It's important that what the color of someone's skin has made them live through in our society. And we need to understand those stories. And we need to understand that, let's face it, when you're a minority in a country and you're treated as such, and in this case, say Black Americans have been treated a certain way for 400 years plus. Now, yes, slavery ended and was supposed to end almost 200 years ago, but has there ever been real equality in this country? And I think that's why it's important to listen to the stories. When we have more black filmmakers making movies, they'll make movies about, well, they can make a superhero film like Black Panther, but they can still address issues like, well, colonialism and what that means within the context of a superhero film. That's why the more diverse voices we get making movies, I think the more interesting the movies become. Now, they might not appeal to everybody, but I think the more people that get to speak up, that get to talk, the better off our society is going to be, because we all have to live together. And we're not going to understand about one another if we don't listen. And I know that I have a lot of conservative friends. I have a lot of even right-leaning friends that are big Star Trek fans. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you really think about it, Star Trek in its original conception is pretty much America goes to tame the universe. I mean, sure, a democratic America, maybe the Camelot, the democratic White House of John F. Kennedy, it moves out into space to tame the universe. I can understand that. That's why Star Trek hasn't necessarily had the kind of international appeal that you would think it would have. But it's very much that idea. The American way of life goes to space. Wagon train to the stars. And there's a lot of people that understand that, and that's why they perhaps have problems with Star Trek's appeal. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of people that say, as you point out, you look at two sides of the same coin and look at things in different ways. That's us. That's our country. And we are right now more divided than I've ever seen the country, and I think it's problematic. And part of that problem is that we can't talk to each other. And I think one of the great things about storytelling, what I've always loved when I was growing up, is when you debate what's going on in a story and you get someone's point of view and they see the story very differently than I do. And I love that. I love debating the various sides. And I don't understand when did suddenly these kinds of cogent, learned debate becomes something to fear and something to not embrace. I don't know, but I think you're absolutely right, and it's sad. It's sad that we now live in a society that, and what I find even weirder is that there are people that believe they're right, that they've taken it upon themselves to have some righteous or furious anger with other people. Indeed, let's summon the cancel squad to take somebody out as if they've been anointed by, I don't know who, some higher authority to go after people just because you disagree with them. It's terrifying. That's fascistic. And that's why I've often said I've had a lot less problems in my life with people that might be considered conservative or even on the right than with people that I know and think that would be on my side of the aisle. The people that are on my side of the aisle have been the ones that have come after me, which I find fascinating, because why is that? And they don't even ask. They don't even stop and go, hey, what did you really mean by this? No, they'll just bring down the fires of heaven and try and take you out, lightning strike and wipe you off the face of the earth. But I think, look, you're absolutely right, and it's time that we need to start talking to one another. The only way we're going to heal deep divides in this country, and by the way, we are all baseline Americans, aren't we? Let's go back to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and things like that, and let's speak from there. Let's point to these things and go, don't we both believe this? So if we both believe this and you're on the opposite side of the aisle from me, why are we not conversing as Americans or as fans or as whomever? And I think that it's something we need to learn to do, and the sooner we learn to do it, the better off we shall be. Anyway, thanks for that letter. It's a good letter. Dennis Chapman writes in, salutations, Rob. Thought I'd dash off a short letter congratulating you on your nominations and win for Best Film and nomination for Best Editing for Tango Shalom. Unfortunately, at the Anatolia Film Festival, we didn't win. I didn't win Best Editor. I was one of the 3 finalists, and our film didn't win there. But we did win other awards in Montreal. Actually, in Turkey, we were actually up for 4 awards, which I didn't even know, which was Best Film, Best Editing, Best Poster Design, thank you, Scott Saslow, and Best Costume Design, which was actually kind of neat. We didn't win any, but we were the 3 finalists. We were one of 3 finalists in each one of those categories. So thank you for that. Where you found the time to get that done amid a global pandemic and all your other daily tasks is certainly a testament to your work ethic. And although I haven't seen the finished film, I'm sure it will delight the Post-Geek Singularity. I cannot wait. Well, it's not really in the Post-Geek Singularity's wheelhouse, but I think if you stick with it, it's still an enjoyable film. Your comments regarding your ongoing joy of editing set me to thinking about my history as a production director in radio and TV in upstate New York in the 70s and 80s. I've always loved editing, and to this day, I still do music audio editing. You'd probably like my 8-minute version of Good Vibrations I completed recently, as well as the rest of my Vision of the Beach Boys' legendary Smile album. Oh, I would like to hear. Send me that. I'd love to hear that. I love remixes and things like that. I love them. Anyway, here's a short story on how my love of editing got me in trouble. I call it The Dangers of Misguided Fan Service. As part of my TV job, I would create numerous 30-second promotional pieces to air on my ABC affiliate, mainly dealing with our syndicated shows. Most of our fare was standard retreads of 70s hits like Welcome Back, Kotter, Three's Company, and so on. We also ran the original Star Trek series on weekends. Being the age of analog pre-digital production, the show would be copied to a 3/4-inch tape, and I would create a B-roll or secondary copy of the scenes I needed to edit together. As a longtime viewer of the show, I would remember the key scenes to use and would create killer promos. We would use the video promos on TV, and I would send the audio versions to them to a local radio station in the market. Keep in mind, it's pretty easy to build a video encapsulation of a show that people can see on TV, but you need to use scenes containing audio that would stand alone on radio and still make sense without the video. So I sent the audio out to radio, which happened to be the Star Trek episode called The Naked Time, from the first season, early on in the first season. The plot involved a strange, intoxicating infection which lowers the crew's emotional inhibitions and spreads throughout the Enterprise. You get the idea. Yes, I do. No beach to walk on. That's where my clever editing goes south. I get a call from my former program director at the radio station airing the Trek promo. Conversation goes like this. Hey, Chip, it's Art. We have a problem with your Star Trek promo. We're getting a lot of complaints. What sort of complaints, Art? I asked. He replied, people are hearing someone using profanity in the promo. I listened to it, and it does sound like the actor is yelling, "Get your fucking hands off me." I immediately realized what he's referring to. Art, the actor is speaking in a Scottish brogue and is telling Mr. Spock to get his Vulcan hands off me, not fucking. Art laughed and replied, look, buddy, I don't give a shit what nationality he is. I can't run the promo as is. We both laughed, and I edited Scotty's big moment out of the Naked Time audio and sent a clean promo with no swearing. True story. You know, you think all the Star Trek fans out there in TV land are going to love this, and then it bites you in the ass. Fan service alone does not a great promo make. Have a wonderful day, Rob, and again, best of luck with Tango Shalom. We Imagination Connoisseurs across the 28 known galaxies give you the Vulcan salute. I remain Dennis Chip Chapman. Dennis, this is your second letter in a few days. I made a whole short take with your last letter. What a great letter this is. I know exactly where you're coming from. I used to be what was called a predator. a producer, editor, and I made promos. I worked at NBC for a year during 2000, 2001, and I worked on the Olympics. I did over 100 Olympics commercials, and then I was kicked upstairs, and I was working for Primetime, making for the Primetime 2001 Primetime launch campaign. And it was fun. I mean, I also worked Kids WB with Kevin Rubio making promos. I like making promos. You got paid a lot of money, and they were fun to do. So I know exactly how that goes. And I've had some things like that happen to me too, when people don't know what's going on, and they're like, "Wait, what is that? What are they saying?" It's so funny. But what a great story. I love that. The Naked Time. Absolutely. Here is another. I think Ash Chauhan. It's Chauhan. I've did this before. I made a short take with your last letter, Ash, but Senor Ashish, and who we know, longtime Imagination Connoisseur. Let me read this letter because it's great. I love this letter. Upon a recent viewing of Superman Returns, I was taken with a rush of feelings of a time that I had long since forgotten. I was reminded of a time before the DC Cinematic Universe. I was reminded of a time when the only hopes for any DC Comics property to hit the silver screen was either Batman or Superman. Coincidentally, my two favorite superheroes of all time. I was reminded of a time when Marvel properties ushered in a new wave of superhero films, everything from X-Men to Spider-Man to Hulk to Fantastic Four to Daredevil and Punisher, and every Marvel superhero under the sun was being optioned in their own film, thanks in a large part to the blockbuster success of Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man. I would add to that the success of the first two X-Men's as well. But what hit me the most when viewing Superman Returns all these years later was a feeling that I had long since abated: anticipation. Anticipation is the best and worst feeling any cinephile can have. Rarely does a movie truly deliver on that feeling of anticipation, but when a movie does, it's a wonderfully staggering feeling that needs to be experienced again. This is why I allowed myself to become infatuated with the allure of anticipation time and time again, despite being burned countless times. I'm not alone in my willful inebriation with anticipation. In fact, we Imagination Connoisseurs are especially prone to it. As impassioned fans, that fervent anticipation is only intensified whenever a film from a long gestating property is announced. I can only imagine how Star Wars fans felt when they got word in 1997 that George Lucas was developing a prequel trilogy. Oh, I can tell you, there was a lot of anticipation. Or how Star Trek fans felt when Paramount announced a cinematic reboot of the franchise in 2007. Maybe then not so much. Anticipation lights the fuse to a firecracker that can either shoot up to dizzying heights or become a useless fizzle of smoke. More than just generating excitement, anticipation gives you hope and sets up lofty expectations that might or might not be realistic. But say a film doesn't live up to your personal expectations of it. Does that automatically make the film bad, or something much worse than it turned out to be? Are we fans to blame for allowing our overt anticipation to ruin our experience of impartially judging a film based on merit? My own experience provides a rather complicated answer. As a lifelong Superman fan, I was frustrated at years of false starts at trying to get a new Superman film off the ground. Quite frankly, it was emotional torture for me. After viewing the Matrix trilogy and watching our hero Neo battle the villainous Agent Smith in a masterclass of epic sensory overload of CGI slugfests, I was amazed at how we were finally at the point where advances in filmmaking had made the unfilmable a celluloid reality. I imagined what a Superman film would look like if it was given this treatment. And then the news broke in the summer of 2004. Bryan Singer, director of the X-Men franchise, partnered with Warner Brothers, the studio that brought us the groundbreaking Matrix trilogy, and announced they were working together on a brand new Superman film for release in the summer of 2006. This was actually going to happen? Hell to the yeah! I was beyond excited. My anticipation through the goddamn roof. The Christopher Reeve films were good, but limited by the technology of their time. After witnessing the Matrix trilogy, I knew this version of Superman wouldn't be blowing out fires or stopping natural disasters. This Superman would be stopping a superpowered villain from leveling Metropolis. I knew Superman would finally be given his due, and the action depicted on the comic book page would finally be realized in full cinematic glory. Bring it on. As casting rounded out for the newly titled Superman Returns, I was dismayed at no mention of a supervillain being cast. There was no mention of Brainiac, of Parasite, of Mongol, Bizarro, nobody. The plot was kept a secret, hardly anything leaked. Rumors swirled that the film was a loose sequel to 1978's Superman. No matter. I held out hope for a supervillain even after the trailer was released in May of 2006 and showed none. I was worried, but definitely not enough to kill my and countless other Superman fans' anticipation for this film. Then came opening day. This would mark the first time in my life I would be able to see a live-action Superman film in the theater. This wasn't just an eagerly anticipated movie, but an event. My anticipation building for nearly 2 years, technically almost 20 since 1987's Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, my childhood hero, Superman, had finally returned to the silver screen. The epic CGI action in the Matrix trilogy would pale in comparison to anything in Superman Returns. The film was going to have a $100 million opening weekend and would blow past 2002's Spider-Man domestic box office haul of $404 million. Guaranteed. Superman Returns was here and I was fucking ready. When the movie was over, the sold-out theater immediately got up and left. No one lingered. It's as if the bell had rung and we were mercifully dismissed from trigonometry class. Ouch. Everyone shuffled their way out of the auditorium. No one talked to each other. There was not a hint of chatter. No, nothing. There was a deathly silence and almost funereal atmosphere. Seeing everyone's reactions, feeling the energy, I knew that the film didn't live up to any of our expectations and what we had anticipated. When talking to friends, we were united in our problems with the film. What could have been an epic telling of the Superman mythos in a post-Matrix trilogy world turned out to be a love letter to Richard Donner. For lack of a better term, Superman Returns was a rehash of 1978's Superman, trying to rebrand a long-since abandoned version of the character and franchise for the new millennium. Superman Returns wasn't a great film, but it wasn't a bad film either. It was somewhere in that watchable purgatory so many films find themselves in, flaws and all. I still hold this view 15 years later. My gripes with the film are many. When viewing the film for the first time in 2006, a feeling of dread washed over me from the very start of the film. A pre-credits text told us that Superman left Earth behind to search for survivors amongst the remains of Krypton's destruction. One of the questions I had right off the bat was, how could there be survivors decades after a planet was incinerated by its sun's supernova, which we literally see in the opening shot of the film? Although we were watching a Superman movie, this little tidbit of the story irked me more than it should have. Also, gone for several years and leaving Earth at the mercy of foes like Lex Luthor and other threats, this was a characterization of Superman that didn't sit well with me. Superman would never turn his back on humanity for any self-affirming mission into his origins, especially if that mission was highly ambiguous and the hypothesis severely improbable. Then the opening credits began. The slow build of John Williams' iconic Superman theme played as the credits zoomed toward the audience in that familiar way seen in past Superman films. The familiarity and the nostalgia of the credits sequence didn't invoke any feeling of joy for me. Rather, a feeling of unease settled in as the film started to already feel dated just 3 minutes in. Nostalgia is best served as a sentiment, not something that can be remanufactured. Was Superman Returns really trying to connect to an abandoned Superman franchise that had run its course? Oh yes. Yes, it was. The film was cast well, with unknown Brandon Routh serving in the titular role. He had the look, but he didn't have much to work with other than trying to emulate Christopher Reeve's performance to keep continuity in this loose sequel to the 1978 film. If given the right material and maybe a tad bit more dialogue to speak, Routh could have been a great cinematic Clark Kent Superman. The supporting performances were perfectly cast, the only exception being Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane. A competent actress and rising star in the early aughts, Bosworth played Lane without any spunk or charisma, clocking in a dour performance that matched the film's tone. A somber film, Superman Returns shuns any moments of joy, the film mired in a glum look and feel. Superman also finds that he has a son named Jason. Never explicitly stated, it was heavily implied that Superman fathered a child with Lois Lane, knocking her up prior to his voyage to the remains of Krypton. The most damning evidence of Jason's paternity comes when the child pushes a piano into one of Lex Luthor's goons in the third act. Further confusing, the Jason subplot was Lane making no mention of Jason's paternity to Superman or Clark Kent. To add further confusion, I'm not entirely sure if Lane knows that Superman and Kent are the same person, as she treats both personas differently in the film, as if she doesn't know. Another annoyance was how little kryptonite affected Superman. In the finale, Superman is shown lifting a growing kryptonite continent into outer space. It made for a very impressive visual, but I was dismayed that what was being depicted on screen was an overpowered Silver Age version of Superman rather than the depowered post-Crisis on Earth's iteration I grew up with. But then again, if we were watching a continuation of the mythology established in the 1978 film, then this Silver Age interpretation of Superman was accurate. There were many other missed opportunities in the film. I was hoping we would finally get a darker post-crisis portrayal of Lex Luthor as depicted in the comics, Superman the Animated Series, and Smallville. Instead, the character was a continuation of the campy real estate tycoon of the Gene Hackman era. Luthor's plot in Superman Returns dealt with him using stolen Kryptonian technology to create a new continent in the hope of monetizing it by renting, leasing, and selling new land to people in need of fresh real estate. Despite Luthor's genius, he didn't pose any physical threat to Superman, and there was no supervillain for Superman to do battle with. The only saving grace was a thrilling sequence where Superman saves a falling airplane from crashing into a packed baseball stadium, a scene which I'm actually in. You can hear my voice. I have lines. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. From saving construction workers falling from job sites to putting out fires with his super breath to using his strength to stop a runaway car or preventing falling objects like the Daily Planet globe from pancaking people, this Superman was doing repetitive, mundane blandishment we've seen in films and live-action TV shows before. I never got my epic Matrix trilogy-inspired CGI hero versus villain battle I hoped for. Damn. Oh, but you did later, didn't you? Although critical reaction was positive for the film, the fan reaction was split. Breaking the 200 million barrier at the domestic box office, no slight feat, especially in 2006, the film made just shy of 400 million worldwide. It wasn't enough. The underwhelming box office shelved the Superman franchise once again. Frustrated, me and my friends often wondered what could have been after this latest attempt at cinematically reviving Superman failed to live up to our lofty expectations. I was filled with jealousy as the summer of 2006 went along and Nolan's Batman franchise took off with Heath Ledger announced as the Joker in The Dark Knight, and Marvel's burgeoning cinematic universe started to take shape with Robert Downey Jr. cast as Tony Stark in Iron Man. I wish that Superman shared in their success. For Superman Returns, the anticipation of a new Superman film after a 19-year drought was pure lightning in a bottle. That type of anticipation wasn't something that could be manufactured again. I blame Bryan Singer relentlessly for missing the golden opportunity. But was my resentment towards Singer or his film fair? After all, I remember reading and seeing countless interviews with him during the lead-up to Superman Returns and where he would talk about always wanting to make a Superman film. He spoke with deep reverence for 1978 Superman and how he wanted to echo the wonder he felt when viewing that film as a child. In Comic-Con 2005, Singer was asked by a fan why he decided to change Superman's costume for the film. Oh, I was there. I was actually shooting that. Singer's response was, change it from what? He went on to school the fan about the evolution of Superman's costume throughout the decades in comics and other media. Singer cared deeply about the character and made the Superman film he always wanted to make. He just didn't make the Superman film I wanted him to make. Like the fan he schooled at Comic-Con, I needed to be schooled about the fact that this wasn't my film but Singer's. After all, this was the man who made the classic The Usual Suspects and the highly influential X-Men. Critics loved his vision for Superman Returns, and there were many fans who agreed. I just wasn't one of them. This was Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, not Ash's and like-minded friends' Superman Returns. No, my resentment toward Mr. Singer and his vision was not fair. I do have a less skewed view of Superman Returns now, especially after the epic Man of Steel finally gave me that action-filled Superman film I always wanted to see, offering somewhat of a catharsis. 15 years later, I still have my gripes with Superman Returns, as mentioned previously, but with Man of Steel satisfying my appetite for a modern Superman film, it made revisiting and appreciating Superman Returns that much easier. There is much to admire about Superman Returns all these years later. It's one of those rare films that you stumble upon TV and decide to watch regardless of what point in the film you happen on. It grips you, and the action sequences of Superman saving citizens from catastrophe is, quite frankly, the best non-combative use of Superman's powers put on film. The storylines in Superman Returns are ripe for sequels. In this age of streaming content and the need for Warner Brothers executives to add subscribers to their fledgling streaming service, HBO Max, an exclusive Superman film for the service would be a great idea. And with the burgeoning trend of cinematic comic book multiverses, maybe HBO Max can make a direct sequel to Superman Returns and give Singer a chance at making a sequel to his vision. I know I'd watch it. Since Superman Returns was released in June of 2006, I've tempered my anticipation when certain films that pique my fanboy interest are announced. Rather than projecting my desires at what I expect the film to be and getting lost in my burning anticipation of it, I realistically assess the film, oftentimes sitting back and waiting to see the final product on screen with the rest of the audience. In fact, I found this to be the best way to enjoy any film. The less you know and anticipate, the better the cinematic experience. From Marvel's studio slate of film and streaming projects to the Snyder Cut to the recently announced slate of never-ending Disney Plus Star Wars material to Denis Villeneuve's Dune to Godzilla vs. Kong, my excitement is definitely there. However, my anticipation is willfully assuaged to prevent any further self-immolation. I've been burned before, and I don't want to be burned again. Anticipation is a great thing to have. Just make sure you don't set the bar so high that a film cannot reach it or become a victim of it. Well, Ash, a great letter. I know it was a long one, but I like your letter. Look, I am right there with you. I am Mr. Anticipation. And I'm lucky in the sense that I've always amped up the anticipation in my mind, but I've always also taken each film as it comes. I try and judge every film for its own sake. Like, I don't necessarily go in, and I find this really interesting. I found this is more true of superhero movies. People have very distinct ideas of what and who their superhero, whatever their favorite superheroes, what they should be. I mean, the arguments, like John Campy and I have always been on in the camp of loving Man of Steel. Is Man of Steel perfect? No. Do I believe that Jonathan Kent should have died in the film? Well, maybe, but not in the way he does. But then again, you know, in the film, if you take the film and read the text of what that film gives you, I think it's true to itself. And for me, I always, again, try and take... That's why I like Man of Steel. I see it more as a science fiction first contact tale of what it means to be Superman. He didn't grow up as Superboy, and I take it unto itself. I don't... And the whole battle at the end of the movie, I mean, the idea that if two super beings are battling over a city, that Superman is somehow supposed to be saving civilians at the same time he's battling Zod, which, by the way, is a battle to the death. I'll never understand that because he's barely been Superman. He doesn't even know how to fly very well. So it's like, how is he supposed to be so, I don't know, have ninja skills where he can battle Zod and save the population at the same time? What I liked about Superman or Man of Steel is it's terrifying. The end of that movie is scary as fuck, and it's supposed to be. And so when I watch Superman or Man of Steel, I'm like, this movie, I think they succeeded in setting out to do what they wanted to do. I think Man of Steel is a triumph, whether I or you like it as much as, again, that's why I think that there is objective goodness in a lot of things, and our own subjectivity doesn't necessarily mean that something that does have inherent goodness is diminished. Do I think Superman or Man of Steel, I keep saying that, is a perfect film? No. I have problems with certain elements of it, but I think it's a damn good film, and I quite enjoy it, and I certainly love the portrayal of Superman. Now, full disclosure, I don't know if you know this, but I'll say it. Some people do. I worked on Superman Returns for 2 years. I was in Australia during the entirety of principal photography, and then I made a 3-hour making-of documentary called Requiem for Krypton that you can watch on the Blu-ray. Now, while Superman Returns was being made, it was A-list all the way. And I think everybody, even Kate Bosworth, did some stellar work. You know, if there's one thing that I understand your credit, the credit that you give her about being a fine actress. I think she's an amazing actress. I think she's incredibly underrated, but she was playing the part as it was written and as Brian wanted her to play the part. They were just going after, I think that, first of all, the Superman Returns that we've all seen, there's a version of it that's a half an hour longer that I think is a little better, that's more fleshed out. It just doesn't change the story at all, but I do think it's more fulfilling. The reason, like, Superman went back to Krypton is because Luthor faked evidence that Krypton was still there. Basically, that's why he went there, not that it blew up. That opening scene where the Kryptonian sun explodes was not in the movie. That was something that was added at the 11th hour after friends and family screenings. The kids were like, this movie, no one talked in the first 20 minutes. Kids were like, I don't understand what's happening, because they didn't know the 78 Superman, they didn't know the Fortress of Solitude, they didn't understand what was going on. So they rejiggered the film and cut a half an hour out of it and made it a little bit more palatable. But yeah, it's a different kind of a movie. It's not your typical superhero film. And I think that I think if there's any lesson to be learned, I can tell you that film, there was an enormous amount of craft and love that went into the making of that movie. Everybody brought their A game. Everybody was trying to make the best movie they possibly could. But I think in the case of Superman, Brian and Mike and Dan, the writers, were very specific. Mike Dougherty, who wrote X2, and Dan and Mike wrote that script as well. Mike Dougherty, of course, directed Godzilla King of the Monsters and Krampus and Trick or Treat. So he's a writer and a director in his own right. But they were trying to make something that was more an emotional journey as opposed to a superhero film. And I think, if anything, I think when people are working on these franchise properties, that's why when I did a show a couple days ago and read that article from a former Disney executive, you really need to know who your audience is. Who are you making this movie for? And if you're saying, well, of course, you're making it for everybody, of course you are. Every movie's being made for everybody. But really, if you're making a Superman movie, I think you always have to be cognizant of the fact that you're making a Superman movie and there are expectations that an audience is going to have of seeing that movie. And you yourself, well, I want to see him fight a supervillain. We now have the technology, and even the Wachowskis said that part of what they were trying to do is they wanted to make a superhero movie, and they used the first Matrix was going to establish the universe in which superheroes could exist for them. And when you have like the Burly Brawl or things that happen in Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, when you see Agent Smith and Neo fighting in the skies, I mean, it's epic. So like you weren't the only one who had expectations of seeing a huge battle that we eventually got in both Man of Steel and the beginning of the other angle of that battle from the beginning of Batman v Superman. So I totally agree with you that, is anticipation, first of all, you said a lot. You said, is anticipation bad? No. And I would say I anticipate every James Bond movie. I get really excited, and sometimes it pays off, and many times it doesn't. But my excitement, I love the James Bond franchise. Even when something so lame like Spectre, which is beautifully made but completely unengaging and just not that interesting and just plain ridiculous at certain points, I still got excited about it. And while I watch it, I enjoy it. I like the Bond franchise. I like that world. But I'm never going to not anticipate a James Bond movie. I think if we're imagination connoisseurs and we like something, look, I mean, I watched Star Trek Discovery, and I'm even watching it going, maybe this week they'll show me an episode that I'll really like. I was very intrigued by moving 1,000 years into the future to see what they did, and it turns out, I mean, what a major misfire. What a colossal failure of imagination season 3 of Discovery was. I mean, my God, let's go 1,000 years in the future so we don't have to stick with canon. And, oh no, let's have the Guardian of Forever walk around in the guise of Paul Guilfoyle. Sure, let's do that. I mean, but I still go into every episode anticipating that maybe it'll be good. But you know what? After Picard, 3 seasons of Discovery, and Lower Decks, there's not a whole lot in modern Star Trek that keeps me, I'm out. I don't anticipate it. But I think anticipation's good. Because sometimes anticipation, like I have to tell you, both with Infinity War and Endgame, my anticipation was through the roof and it paid off. I had a great time at both of those movies. Those movies were wildly entertaining. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I anticipated them enough. So I never want to lose that in my life. I never want to be that guy that's like, movie's going to suck. I hate that. I mean, I think that's so lame. Look, man, it's a lifestyle choice. Don't ever stop anticipating anything. Anticipate things. Love things. But don't expect them. You should take them for what they are. So often people review things based on what they're not rather than what exactly is actually there to review. And that drives me crazy too. I think a lot of people who talk about, I don't like Man of Steel, Superman won't kill, blah, blah, blah. They're not even reviewing the movie itself. They're reviewing their idea of what the character of Superman should be. I hate that. I try and review what's there. I'm not going to review what isn't there. I'm going to review what's there. What is there? What's in this movie? What's in the text of the film? How does the character of Superman, how is he portrayed? Well, Superman wouldn't kill. I'm like, dude, in Man of Steel, Superman does not have a choice. These people are going to wipe humanity off the planet. They are destroying wide swaths of land in populated areas. If Superman doesn't kill Zod and win this battle, all of humanity is going to die. So, yeah, did thousands of people die at the end of Man of Steel? Yes. Could Superman have prevented it? I don't see how. He's dealing with Zod. He's been Superman for like a week. He barely knows how to fly straight. And you want to say he's going to defeat a Kryptonian military genius? I don't know. It drives me crazy. But that's just me. Anyway, great letter. Thanks for writing in. As far as Superman Returns, though, I'm not partial to it. I can just tell you that people did try and make the best movie they possibly could, and there was so much wonderful craft. And if you ever pick up the Blu-ray of Superman Returns, watch my documentary. One day maybe I should remaster it because I shot about 1,500 hours of video, and I could make another documentary about that, but it kind of would be fun because they wouldn't let me finish it in HD, and we shot it in HD. And you know who else did it with me? It was Adam Robitel. Adam Robitel, who directed Escape Room and Insidious 4, and he's I think he just went to or either came back from Europe or just is going to Europe. Was it going to Budapest? I'm not sure, but he's out. He and I worked on all the documentary materials, and it was one of the best years of my life. Let me tell you, I loved it. This one, our old friend Just a Brown Girl. Just a Brown Girl is back. I love Just a Brown Girl. She's also a filmmaker, and I hope to one day. It's very funny. A lot of you people out there who watch this show, I hope to meet most of you. I mean, there are people that I wonder, like, I bet we could hang out and have a really good time. Just a Brown Girl is one of those people. I greatly respect what she's doing, making her way in the industry. Haven't heard from her in a while, but here we go. Hey, Rob, happy Tuesday. By the time you read this letter, 2 things will have happened, I hope. 1, I will have posted another video on my YouTube channel. And 2, I will have sent out feelers for a manager. I've been researching for a while, trying to find folks that may be both receptive to a cold call or folks who might be a good fit as a collaborator, someone who might get me. I have a quick question for you. As you know, I'm mounting a campaign to create the next great fantasy film franchise, and I have a cast wish list filled with British actors. Do you think I should try and retain representation in London? Do you think it would make any difference or be easier to find someone to represent me across the pond? I feel like my PGA cred will go further outside of America. I just want to know your thoughts. I am sending Snooki's gift baskets to 3 managers tomorrow, along with a personalized note and an Amazon gift card attached to an invite to watch my movie. I'll let you know if it actually gets me in the door. I like your style. That's a good idea. Or at least a response of any kind. Enough said, still lurking. I am just a brown girl. P.S. If you're still taking suggestions for whining about movies, might I suggest, in observation of Black History Month, Eve's Bayou. I love that movie. Directed by Cassie Lemons, a brown girl. She was also in Silence of the Lambs. My favorite thing about that movie is that you could drop a family of any ethnicity into that story and it would work. That's rare with any film. Also, have you guys watched Fresh, directed by Boaz Yakin? I cringe at the thought of any urban drug lord drama featuring black folk, but this one was a pleasant surprise. It's pretty damn smart in an unexpected way, and Marvel fans should recognize the Mandalorian alum immediately. Just my thoughts later, dude. That's from Just a Brown Girl. First of all, I think, you know what? Why not get representation across the pond? It's very frustrating trying to get any kind of representation here. And my feeling on the matter is until you're a real accomplished person, it's better to do things on your own. So far, having an agents don't want to work for you anymore. There's very few agents that are willing to develop your career. Agents want to sign people that have already shown that they already have credibility. Nobody wants to build careers anymore from scratch. They want to maintain careers that have already been built. And I think that's a big problem. And even with like Tango Shalom, here we have a movie. Everyone's trying to tell us, well, you should do this, you should do that. You got to go win accolades because you have no stars in your movie. You got to do this. And my whole thing is that the movie's good. The movie is what it is. Why not go try and sell the movie? Well, no one's going to buy it if. I'm like, you know what? I don't believe anybody. Everybody's always telling you, you got to do this, you got to do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. My feeling is this, and I've always believed this. Never ask for permission, beg for forgiveness. Go out and do what it is you want to do, and if you step on someone's toes or something bad happens, well, you don't want anything bad to happen. It only works if you know you're right and you know you can succeed. Because at the end of the day, if you go out and do something, it's like, oh, I didn't realize we needed a permit to shoot on this street corner. Did we get the shot? Yep. Okay. I didn't realize that we knew that. Well, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll go home right now. We got the shot right. We'll go home right now. If everybody listened to people in the industry, nothing would ever get done. Nothing would happen. As I said before, as William Goldman once wrote, nobody in Hollywood knows anything. Of course, I've now amended that. And he was right, by the way. William Goldman was right about that, but that has changed. Say it with me now. William Goldman once said, nobody in Hollywood knows anything except Kevin Feige, who knows everything. But, so I think you should try that. Look, try anything. The thing is, Just a Brown Girl, you've made a feature. And I'll tell you, I've noticed, because you call yourself Just a Brown Girl, you've got a little advantage, a little leg up. You're a brown girl. I would say that puts you in a league higher than you were a year or two. Exploit that. Make that work for you. And why shouldn't you design the next great fantasy franchise based on a series of books you optioned? You go, girl. Maybe, you should come on the channel and we'll do I'd love to talk to you. We should do a live show together. I don't know if you want to, you might want to stay anonymous. Maybe you could have one of those, I don't know, artwork of you or something, and we'll just talk. But it would be great to hear from you. Maybe jaw about filmmaking. But keep us informed. I love having you here. Thank you for writing in, which I love. Let's see. What else we got going on? What do we have going on? Here's a letter from David Miller. Mr. Miller, how are you? Hello, Robert. Top of the morning to you. I just want to share with you something that caught my interest. I know we're all enjoying WandaVision. I was watching an online interview with the cast, and during this interview, Paul Bettany says, kind of off the cuff, that they shot the first episode in 2 days. Now, I know the actual episode is only about 25 minutes long, but I was really surprised that they shot it in only 2 days. I know I Love Lucy did entire episodes live in 30 minutes, so there's definitely precedence. Still, it seems like a case of Swiss watch-like coordination to do the show in only 2 days, especially when you consider that there were some practical effects that had to be worked into the performances. Of course, Bettany could have been exaggerating to indicate that they did it rather quickly, but I'm going to say that he was serious when he said they'd shot it in 2 days. Rob, you've directed episodic television. What do you think about the claim that WandaVision's pilot was shot in 2 days? Best, David. Well, the show that I was directing, we had to shoot the whole show in 3 days, and it was rough, let me tell you. Those were long 12-hour days. I think they could have. I think that, look, a lot of that stuff, a lot of their visual effects and things were done in post-production, but because the first 2 episodes were very sitcom-like, they probably ran those scenes because they don't, they weren't necessarily close-ups and they weren't shooting standard coverage. They were shooting those like they were real sitcoms. So you run the whole scene and you do it a couple times and bang, you're done. They blocked it. I believe they could have shot that first episode in 2 days. I very much believe that because, they weren't turning around and they were shooting it like a sitcom. And so I think very much that I think that absolutely could have happened. I do believe it. Now this one comes from our friend Doc Vader. Now this is one I want to read to you because there is a movie that dropped on Netflix that I have not seen yet, but the trailer looks extremely intriguing. It's a Korean science fiction film set in space called Space Sweepers. That's right, Space Sweepers. And this is the first review I've received from that movie from our friend Doc Vader. Dear Rob, greetings to you and all our Imagination Connoisseurs. Hope all are staying safe and COVID-free. In a previous letter regarding creating science fiction, I mentioned Space Sweepers. The Korean movie has recently been made available through Netflix. It was one of my highly anticipated movies, and I was thoroughly entertained by it. Set in 2092, its story revolves around the crew of the Victory. It is a space junk debris collector vehicle, hence Space Sweepers. At the helm of it is Captain Jang, an individual with a shady past but clearly driven to be on top of things. Pilot or helmsman, Taeho, is a desperate man trying to recover something from his past versus the piling debt that the crew all has to settle. Tiger is a former gang leader and now ship's engineer whose personality as a fierce gangster rivals his true nature. Finally, the last member is Bubs, a former army android who's trying to save up to buy his own skin. I love that. The crew stumbles upon a precious cargo that can change their fortunes overnight, but with unfortunate events also free them not only of their debts, but of their past selves. The movie stars Song Jook-ki, Descendants of the Sun, Kim Tae-ri, The Handmaiden, Sun Kyu-jin, Extreme Job, Hae-jin Yo, a taxi driver, Richard Armitage playing Sullivan, and introducing Yi-rin Park as Dorothy. As with Asian cinema, movies tend to be overlong as they cram as much as they want into this story, but this time the 2 hours pass by without a dull moment. It does clearly have the usual Korean cinema elements of melodrama, a bit of a laugh, and action hero moments. I also did not bother with the CGI as it blended naturally within the movie's theme and a bit better than The Wandering Earth. You know what? I went and saw The Wandering Earth in the theater. Talk about a movie that was overstuffed, but I loved it. It's not good, but I loved it. Overall, in my opinion, was an astoundingly entertaining movie, albeit not the best or original science fiction story. I highly recommend it to our community as it really gives off a Hollywood vibe despite being a 100% Korean movie. Yours, Sithly, Doc Vader. Look, man, I used to think of Asian cinema as somehow lesser, but that went away about 30 years ago. I mean, there's some incredible science fiction movies coming out of Korea and genre films in general, horror as well. I mean, there's some dope ass Korean horror and science fiction movies, and so yeah, I definitely want to check it out. It's always popping up in my Netflix queue, and I totally want to see it. Yes, I do. Well, let's see what you guys are saying. If you're saying anything here, let's see what's going on. What is happening in the chat over here? I do not know. Let me see. Oh wow, there's a lot of people are saying things. Okay. You know what? I've got a couple of super chats actually from yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. Wait a minute. Where is? I did have this. I had it up here. Oh, it's right there. There they are. There we go. So yesterday, when I was talking about actors of various ethnicities playing certain historical roles, and I went off the air and didn't see that there were two questions that people sent in to me. The first being, "I disagree, motherfucker." Send in a tip and said, "It's not overcompensating for actors of different races to play romanticized British royalty. Come on, man. An actor is an actor. A white guy in Roots as Kunta is not romanticism at all. There's no romanticizing Roots. You're confusing historical with non." Listen, that's what I was saying. I mean, from my perspective, look, if you want to do, say, a different kind, if you want to adapt Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, when you've got the gangs, the white gang versus the Puerto Ricans in West Side Story, that is an adaptation of West Side Story, and it's period accurate. And we're going to see another version of that from Steven Spielberg at the end of this year that I'm excited about. But if you're trying to make a historical drama, and I think that you're trying to create a certain authenticity to that historical drama, I don't think casting people that whatever ethnicity, if you were going to make, unless I don't know, if there was some, I don't know, you're making a Victorian story in England and it was cast entirely with Chinese actors. I don't have anything against Chinese actors, but I don't know if you'd be able to create the verisimilitude that you wanted with that if you're making a historical drama. you're trying to create, if you're doing it, you're trying to create a realism and an authenticity. It's not, the color of actors and diversity it's not the important part. You're trying to make it as realistic as possible. Look, I know that we've always had a problem with ethnicity here in the West. I mean, we still believe Jesus was a white dude. That's how he's been portrayed for how many hundreds of years, which is patently absurd. The way the standard picture of Jesus that appears in most churches, especially in the United States, is wrong. So no verisimilitude. Jesus has no verisimilitude, at least in the United States. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, but it's if you're going for historical accuracy. If not, you can make Hamilton and make the inclusion of your cast, make it a part of the story, which I think is really interesting. It just depends what you want to do. Like, I have no qualms about casting any actor for anything, but if you're trying to do a recreation of a certain historical event, and it was predominantly populated by white dudes or black dudes or yellow dudes or pink polka dotted dudes, whatever, you want to hire the people that most embody that authenticity. Unless you don't care, in which case you're making sort of a historical pastiche and you can cast anybody you want. That was my only point, really. Louise Sparrow sends in a tip and she says, "Hi, Rob. As someone who appreciates models and fan talent, I'd love you to check out HR Zone's two new The Boys figures on Twitter." Oh, man, I saw these figures. But you know what? I bet lots of people in the chat have not. So let me get this. This is if I can copy this here. Yep, I'm gonna copy this and put these in because this stuff is beautiful, as Renee Belloc would say. It's beautiful. There you go. Check this stuff out. This stuff is dope. I saw these yesterday. Woohoo! Awesome. Samir Durrani writes in, "Hi, Rob. I hope you're doing well. With the emphasis on the theme of children in WandaVision and the high likely that this show will not end happily for Wanda, how likely do you think we're going to get a Torchwood Children of Earth style situation? My theory is that one way or another, Wanda will be stripped away from her children and lose Vision again, which will cause her to develop the if I can't have children, no one can attitude, whereby she takes a few children hostage in the hopes that someone will help bring her children back and in return she'll give back the children she has taken as hostage. This would explain the Spider-Man 3 set pics showing missing children posters. Well, I think it's going to end badly. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but remember, Spider-Man Far From Home takes place over 7 months after WandaVision, so, or at least unless there's a time jump in WandaVision, so that could very well be. I don't know. I do know this. WandaVision's going to end badly. It's not going to be good. Not going to be good. Let's see. Jojo Ponce became a member and also sent in a super chat. Thanks, Jojo. "Hey, Rob, new member here. I'm from the Philippines. I miss going to the cinema more than anything. Thanks for the great content." Well, Jojo, I appreciate that. I miss going to the cinema too. I haven't gone to the cinema. This is the longest I've gone without going to the movies since I was like 4. And so I don't think I ever stopped going to the movies once I started. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's very McClunky. I don't like it at all. I want to go back to the movies just like you. Roger Haynes sent in a super chat. Thank you, Roger. I appreciate the daily support. You're always welcome to ask a question, but thank you. I very much appreciate it. Willow Yang is here for some Willow talk. Willow says, "Am I missing a detail? Or is it ever explained in Far Beyond the Stars," that would be the Deep Space Nine episode, Far Beyond the Stars, how Cisco got the vision he did? Do you think that Benny Russell was an actual real person in the Star Trek universe? Ooh, Willow, that's a good question. Wasn't it like a Pa-Wraith thing? It's been a while since I've seen the episode. I think it was either the prophets or the Pa-Wraiths that induced that vision in him. So I think that's how he had those visions. But I think... I always believed that Benny Russell was, in fact, a real author in the Star Trek universe. I honestly believe that. I always thought that they would revisit that idea someday, that maybe... I remember reading once that somebody said, what What if at the end of Deep Space Nine, the camera pulls out and you see Benny sitting in this diner writing in his book, and you realize the entirety of Deep Space Nine was just his writings? But that would kind of negate the rest of the Star Trek universe. But I think Benny Russell was, in fact, in the Star Trek universe back in the 50s writing science fiction novels. At least that's how I kind of always saw it. Tyrone Edwards says, "Hi, Rob. How excited are you for Judas and the Black Messiah when it hits HBO Max Friday?" I can't wait. It's Daniel Kaluuya, and I can't wait to see it. Again, another historical epic based on real people. I think it looks terrific. Obviously, the reviews it's been getting are stellar, and I kind of like it. Trial of Chicago 7, Black Messiah, Judas and the Black Messiah. We're getting all kinds of great. It was tumultuous times, and I like that. I'm here for it. Even One Night in Miami and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. A lot of really interesting historical Americana happening, and I think Tyrone, I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks great. It looks great. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, "Do you think our Lord Feige will selectively take the Fox-casted characters he likes into the MCU? For example, Deadpool is on his way, so will Wade bring his awesome version of Colossus with him? Colossus has a superbly cast sister in Anna Taylor-Joy." I don't think so. Here's my thought about this. I think Aaron Taylor-Johnson, our Quicksilver, and I think Evan Peters, the X-Men Quicksilver, are both, I like them both. But I think that the Evan Peters Quicksilver is actually the X-Men Quicksilver. He came, and it's the 80s version of him. It's the version that would have been in Apocalypse. And somehow he's been brought through the multiverse to us. I don't know who did it. I don't know how it happened. But I think they're going to reboot the X-Men from scratch in the MCU. I really believe that. Although Anna Taylor-Joy, I wouldn't mind if she stayed around. I love her. 200 Watt 200 Watt Studio says, "Couldn't Variety have just called a Mulligan?" Yeah, maybe they should have. I love that. Emil Johansson sends in a tip. "Hello, Emil. I can relate to the story you mentioned. I was upset with a teacher once, but in hindsight, I overreacted and the teacher was right. I was just too emotional." Well, at least you can look back and remember that now. That's a good thing. Glenn Taylor, who has been married to his wife for 24 years. "Every time I hear Quicksilver, my mind automatically goes to the 1986 Kevin Bacon film, Damn, I'm Old." Dude, you're not the only one. I think about that too. That's, by the way, that's the movie with the bikes. I'm a bike messenger. I was a stock trader, but I'm now a bike messenger. If you haven't seen Quicksilver, all you have to do is look at the trailer on YouTube. Go check it out now. That's very funny, Glenn. Stubble McShave says, "Congratulations to composer John Williams. He finished his 89th lap around our luminous spheroid of plasma held together by its own gravity." That means the sun, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Stubble McShave, he's 89. John Williams is 89. By the way, next month, March 22nd, big day on this channel. It is officially William Shatner Day. 90th birthday, William Shatner Day. And John Williams is 1 year younger than he is. So how about that? Very amazing. Anthony Gonzalez comes back and says, "How many in the Post-Geek Singularity have been stopped by cops when they were riding their bicycle to a local Blockbuster? What are you doing in this neighborhood?" is what I got from that. In my opinion, I don't need to listen to Lou Dobbs or Ben Shapiro. I promise you, they're bigots. I don't watch Fox News, so I didn't listen to Lou Dobbs. I have to say, I've watched a lot of Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro has a lot of. I don't think Ben Shapiro's a bigot. I don't think so. Lou Dobbs might be. I mean, again, we had that letter earlier on from somebody. I mean, people have different points of view. I think that there's a lot of people that look. It really depends where you're coming from. I mean, does Ben Shapiro say provocative stuff? Do I agree with him a lot of the time? No, I don't agree with him. But I don't know that he's really so much a bigot as he's trying to. Again, he comes from things that are a different place than me. But I mean, I wouldn't say that I've ever necessarily heard him say anything that was bigoted. I think he says a lot of things that people don't want to talk about or admit, and it's difficult. And I do think he says incendiary shit to get a reaction from people. But but yeah. I never went to a local Blockbuster because I worked in video stores before there were Blockbusters. But I don't know. I mean, how many people were? That's an interesting question. How many people were stopped by the cops going to Blockbuster Video? Yeah. Glenn Taylor says, Rob, the reason Monica and Captain Marvel are feuding is because Monica told her the first Wonder Woman movie was better than the Captain Marvel movie. Well, maybe you're right about that. Sheriff Carl, I have Hot Toys figures of both of them, though. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, is Iron Maiden the greatest band ever? Their songs and stage shows are definitely the stuff of an imagination connoisseur's infinite dreams. To Tame a Land, based on Dune. Where Eagles Dare, about Clint Eastwood. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and on and on. Don't forget Eddie. Their character that's on the cover of their albums. Iron Maiden is definitely an imagination connoisseur band. Come on, Number of the Beast. I love that stuff. It's great. And you're probably right. Trav Hall sends in a tip and says, hi, Rob. I was watching Promising Young Woman the other night, and I think I liked it. Beautifully shot and acted. Is it me, or was Clancy Brown's dad role the only decent male human being in the whole movie? This film was filled with horrible men. Yeah, but you know what? Like, I don't mind seeing things that are filled with horrible men, because men can be horrible, especially if you're a woman. Ask any woman. I have sisters, man. Men are bad dudes. we need to do better. So, and also that movie was obviously there was, not all the men were terrible, not all of them, but it was certainly set. And remember, she was going in to avenge someone. So it really is supposed to make you think rather than get offended. I would say, okay, there are not a lot of sympathetic male characters in this movie, and there aren't. But I can understand that. And knowing that when you go in, can you still enjoy the movie and watch it? I mean, you're the exception. I know I'm the exception because we're not horrible people. You're watching the show, so I know you're not horrible. But yeah, I mean, I think when you watch a movie like that, you gotta watch it for what it's trying to tell you. So Derek Klingel says, hey, Rob, my opinion for what they do next with the Bond franchise with whoever buys it is an anthology series. Really cool one-offs instead of rebooting. That way we could get an Idris Elba Bond, a Quentin Tarantino Bond, and maybe an old Bond. Hey, I would watch that. Why not? I would totally watch that. Stephen Goggin, an Irishman in Somerset, became a member of the channel. Livia's other son, Patrick, became a member. Hepketo Locke became a member. I'm just going to read these because I know I've read them before, but why not? Captain Bean Zeno became a member. Chris Cooling became a member. Simon became a member. Randon Lummer became a member. Med6814 became a member. Rob Altus became a member. Max Relax became a member. Wind Goddess became a member. Joshua G became a member. Electron Star Collapse became a member because... don't let the stars collapse on you. Black Phillip Alvarez became a member. 666 became a member. Ed Rojas became a member. John became a member. Danny Lane became a member. And Danny Lane, she's in your... Jose Enrique Gomez became a member. Tom42 became a member. And Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, Rob, dude, have you ever checked out Wardruna from Norway? Wardruna. They play a modern sort of ancient Norse music. Animal bones, skin, sticks, and horns. It's beautiful, triumphant, melancholic, and epic. Top 3 shows I've ever seen. What's your favorite live show? Ooh. Well, Sheriff Carl, I think my favorite live show I've ever seen in my life was Prince at a small venue on Sunset Boulevard. And it was they announced it like at 3:30 or 2 o'clock, or I don't remember. And you had to go and grab tickets and then go right to the venue. And we were waiting all day, and we went and got in. And I mean, Prince was wandering through the crowd, shredding on his guitar. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's my favorite live show. But that sounds great. I love that. I would love to see that. It sounds like a Juno reactor show, which is something I really want to go see. Yeah, I would see that. That sounds amazing. Wardruna. That's Wardruna. Wardruna. I would look into that. Brandon Sheehy says, Rob, how do you rate Benicio del Toro as an actor? Oh man, I love him. From Fear and Loathing to Sicario, I find him an immensely watchable actor that brings his own unique screen presence to all of his roles. Bit wasted in the MCU, though, unfortunately. You know what? He was wasted in the MCU. I hope they bring him back and that he has more. Like I've always said that I would love to see Jeff Goldblum and Benicio del Toro do like a Cosmic Roads picture together. I mean, Jeff Goldblum's already doing a show for Disney. Get Benicio del Toro and do like the Celestials Road show or whatever. You know, the Collector and the Game Master. You know, his character's name, and they should go on. They should go on adventures together with Howard the Duck, the three of them. I would love that. But I think I love Benicio del Toro. Remember, first time I saw Benicio del Toro, he was the young henchman in the James Bond film License to Kill from '89. Woohoo! Richard says, could you cast Mansa Musa as a white actor? His Mali Empire never encountered a white European state or dealt with whites, so any story involving him would never be racial, so why not? Isn't that the same creative argument you could make for Anne Boleyn? I guess. I suppose, you know, but was Anne Boleyn black? I mean, they've done it, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. I don't know, but I mean, again, if I was making something historically accurate, I would want to go in and make it as historically accurate as possible. That would be something that I would do. I mean, anybody can play anybody if you want. I mean, if you don't care, you can cast whoever you want. But if you're trying to make something that's historically accurate, I think it would stand out as a sore thumb. You know, I don't care how people, like I famously said, sometimes I think that you can make casting decisions like The Shawshank Redemption. The character of Red was written as a white man, but they cast Morgan Freeman, and can you imagine anyone else in that role? Why did they call you Red? They didn't even change the line. Maybe it's because I'm Irish. And I think it worked great. So I don't have a problem with ethnicities in roles at all. Like, you hire whoever you want. But if you're making something that you want to have historical authenticity or accuracy, I think it's important who you can't just cast anybody willy-nilly. Magic K says, do you consider Dwayne McDuffie Kevin Feige before Kevin Feige? He created the DC animated universe in the Milestone Media Comics. I actually knew Dwayne McDuffie a little bit. He married a friend of mine, Charlotte Fullerton, that I went to USC with. He was a lovely guy. He was just a big hulking bear of a man, but just a lovely guy. Really, really smart. I wouldn't consider him Kevin Feige because he wasn't, you know, the animated universe in the Milestone. I love my Milestone comics. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at one of them, Icon, the other day. I wouldn't consider him Kevin Feige because he hasn't made 23 movies that collectively have grossed $1 billion each, but he certainly did a lot. And he's a phenomenal talent, and I have not. There's not enough good things. There's not enough good adjectives or enough adjectives in the world for Dwayne McDuffie, but definitely he did have the kind of inclinations that Kevin Feige has for sure, and he left us way too soon. Paranormal Adventures sends in a tip and says, are there any updates on when the film festival will be wrapping up this week? I've got some feelers out. I'm going to start shooting interviews with folks, and hopefully I want to do my epic announcing the semifinalists and then announce the winners. I remember there being more movies to be uploaded and the festival trailer coming out. All that's going to be coming this week. Yeah, and I want to wrap it up and really hit on the short story competition, which is going to be fun. I've had so much fun doing the film festival. Claudius says, Monsieur Robert, best band ever? Prince and the Revolution, of course. New Power Generation, someone asks. No, Prince was best with Wendy and Lisa. And yes, my favorite album was Sign of the Times. I'm a monster, as you all know, I'm a monster Prince fan. The thing about Sign of the Times, it was just such a diverse album. There was so many different kinds of songs on it. And but then again, you know, while it has a lot I would consider maybe filler, I like some of those sprawling records like Emancipation or Crystal Ball. But Sign of the Times is such a unique record. It's so great. You're absolutely right about that. But I think Prince, he kind of was he went off on his own. I think I liked the Revolution seemed very focused for him, and I wish we got more Prince than Revolution albums. I really do. Richard says, I just get a little annoyed that they've never cast Cleopatra as a big no. I just get a little annoyed that they never cast Cleopatra as a big-nosed, inbred, homely Macedonian woman. I don't want Gal Gadot, Elizabeth Taylor, or a black actor. Yep. I mean, again, that is why Hollywood is Hollywood. But I would think it would be fascinating to see a movie where somebody who looked more like the actual Cleopatra. How do you make that movie? How do you tell that story? I think that would be fascinating to watch. I would be up for that. I'm here for that movie. I would totally watch that movie. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, gentle beings across these 28 known galaxies. I think it's time to bring Robservations episode number 616 to an end. Also, because I have to go work for John Campia and make another companion video for him, which I'm going to go do. So I have to go talk for another 2 hours, which will be exciting. So check that out. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel through super chats and tips and all that. Please, if you want, subscribe and smash that like button and hit that notification bell. You know, the standard YouTube things that everybody says, because why not? We want to build our audience and share and all that. If you want to send me letters to read, or you want to send letters to Let's Get Physical Media, or you want to send letters to Whining About Movies, please go to the Burnettwork.net website. A lot of the letters I read here, and some I don't, are on the website. You can read them and comment on them. There's a lot of stuff to go through on the website. Check that out. Also, you can go to our Facebook pages. You can go to the Whining About Movies Facebook page. You can go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. You can go to Let's Get Physical Media and Fully Articulated. I will be back tomorrow on Fully Articulated with Az and Justin from Justin's Collection. I think we're going to be showing our 5 favorite 6th scale figures. Each one of us is going to show our 5 and anything we might have picked up this week. So that'll be fun. So check that out. And go find the Richard. He's always throwing watch parties on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. There's a bunch of folks having fun. Speaking of that, I want to thank my moderating staff. Thank you, Mike Bodden. Thank you, the Richard. Thank you, Justin Toner. Thank you, Greg Smith is here. Joshua Levesque is here. Bunyan Snipe is here. We got full house of mods, which is amazing. By the way, Whining About Movies does return tomorrow with Gladiator, and we will really be jumping in head first to our viewer's choice. We've only done one for the month of February, and the month of February is slipping away. So we will get back on that horse. We're watching Gladiator. That'll be fun. And on that note, I will say to all of you, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day. And I will see you mañana.